Hi friends, welcome to Beautifully Bookish Bethany. In today's video, I am doing a tag, which I don't usually do, but I thought this one was really interesting. It has great questions and hopefully you'll get a lot of great book recommendations from it. This is the Around the World in 80 Pages book tag created by Michael from Fit to Be Read. Thanks for tagging me. So like I said, I thought these questions were really interesting. They encourage you to sort of explore books from around the world, from different universes. And if you guys don't follow Michael's channel, Fit to Be Read, I will link him down below. You should definitely go check him out. He reads a lot of science fiction, a lot of fantasy, and has a lot of really great reviews. So if you're not following him already, go check him out down below. With that said, we're gonna go ahead and dive into these questions. And, you know, I had a hard time limiting myself in books to answer some of them, so you're welcome. You're gonna get so many great book recs and channel recs. Question 1, what is your favorite book set in or with reference to Eastern Europe or Asia? I've got 4 options for you, 1 from Eastern Europe and 3 from different countries in Eastern Asia. For Eastern Europe, we are headed over to Russia, reading The Bear and the Nightingale by Catherine Arden. I feel like I recommend this a lot, especially this time of year, but it is a really fantastic book. It's the first book in a trilogy that draw on Russian folklore and mythology. These are fantasy novels with a strong female character as our lead, and I just love them. I think the writing is beautiful and lyrical, and they, at least for me, totally swept me away into another world, but they're set in Russia and draw on Russian folklore and mythology, so go check them out. From there, we're gonna head down to China for A Hero Born by Jin Yong. This is the first book in the Condor Heroes series, and I am gonna say I did prefer book 2 to book 1. This particular installment is not necessarily my favorite in the series, but I think the whole thing is really interesting. It is a classic of Chinese kung fu fantasy. These were originally written in the 1950s and are now finally being translated into English. They are epic family dramas, kind of soap opera-ish, but with lots of kung fu fighting. And yeah, they're really fun. I really enjoy them. Again, I liked book 2 a lot better than book 1. This one sometimes has some pacing issues, but again, it was written in the 1950s. If you're looking for something set in China, give this one a try. But maybe you want something from Korea, then try this literary historical fiction. The Court Dancer by Kyung Suk Shin is a novel translated from the original Korean into English, and again, I loved this. This is not something I normally probably would have picked up on my own, but I heard about it from Matthew Sharapa, who reads a lot of books in translation, and something about this just spoke to me and he raved about it. So I picked it up and I absolutely loved it as well. It's kind of a coming of age story following a young Korean woman who is orphaned and then brought into the court as a court dancer. Then she ends up having kind of an affair with a French diplomat. She goes to Paris for a while in like the Belle Epic era, and it's a really beautifully written book that's really interesting. It's part coming of age story, but it's an exploration of identity, of race, of family, and I just really loved it. This was a beautiful book. Finally, heading to Japan, you might want to try Warcross by Marie Lu. This is a ton of fun, especially if you're into virtual reality or video games. I finally just finished this duology. There's 2 books in it. It's a YA sci-fi series in our near future with this virtual reality video game called Warcross, but there's lots of twists and turns, and I loved it. I thought it was great. Question 2, recommend a booktuber from a country other than your own that you regularly watch. So I was thinking about this for a while because I've been watching less booktube than I used to. I've been on TikTok a lot though. So I am going to recommend to you a couple of booktubers as well as a TikToker and one person who is both. Like, I follow her on TikTok and booktube. That person is Jean Bookish Slots, and she actually just had her debut novel come out, so congrats to her. She lives in the UK and studies mythology. She's got a lot of really interesting recommendations for fantasy with mythology, a lot of books that are feminist, that are sapphic, so definitely go and check her out. The other TikToker I want to recommend if you guys are on TikTok is Drea Reads. She is Puerto Rican and currently living in Germany and has really great recommendations. She reads a lot of Star Wars books, a lot of Latinx books, a lot of sapphic books, fantasy, so definitely go check her out if you're on TikTok. And my final booktuber recommendation is Vish from Books with V. She lives in Australia and also reads a lot of sci-fi fantasy, kind of a wide variety of things, and she's really great. She's got great reviews and definitely would recommend checking out her channel. I will have all of these people linked in the video description down below. Question 3, a book you DNF'd before 80 pages. Okay, this is not something I do frequently. Most of the time I'll read like 40%, 30 to 40% of a book before DNFing it, but there are exceptions. Last year there was one that I DNF'd at 80 pages, in fact, at the 20% mark. This was The Ballad of Hattie Taylor by Susan Anderson. So this was pitched as like a sweet Western historical romance, coming of age story. It had this beautiful cover and I was like very excited. And then I got into it and I was like, oh no, I can't. The point at which we have our hero married to another woman and engaging in essentially marital rape. We have our heroine at that time still being a teenage girl and there's some like, oh, like iffy grooming-ish stuff. I was like, no, nope, I'm noping out of this. There were some other things too. If you want to hear details, check out my Goodreads review, but no, thank you. Question 4, a book you settled for and picked up at an airport or anywhere and ended up pleasantly surprised with. Okay, so I have an answer for this. This is not a book that I picked up at an airport. I couldn't think of something that quite fit that prompt, but I do have a book that I picked up randomly at a New York Comic-Con because I just happened to be close to the line and someone was like, hey, you want to like a signed book? And I, at the time, you're gonna laugh, but at the time I had never heard of this author. I didn't know anything about them, anything about this book, but I was just like, yeah, sure, what the hell. It was The Only Good Indians by Stephen Graham Jones. He was signing at New York City Comic-Con and I had never heard of him. I didn't know anything about his books. He's an Indigenous author who writes amazing literary horror and I'm now a big fan and I love his books. This ended up being such a pleasant surprise and it was like a one-off because I was just there. Who knew? So yeah, I have a signed arc signed personalized arc of The Only Good Indians from New York Comic-Con 2019. And this was fantastic. So like I said, this is a horror novel. It's literary horror, so it's very character driven. It's a slow burn, kind of quiet story that is punctuated by these moments of intense violence and gore. It follows these 4 Native American men who did something when they were young and are now being haunted by maybe the spirit of this elk-headed woman. Is she a demon? Is she a spirit? They're being hunted down. And it's very interesting. So I really loved this. I've gone on to read more books from Stephen Graham Jones and I'm a big fan. So who knew? I think that's like in the spirit of the question. Question 5. In Jules Verne's classic Around the World in 80 Days, Phileas Fogg is a perfectionist, more concerned with his perfection than his amazing places that he travels. So, name a book with a perfectionist character, or if that doesn't resonate, describe ways in which you are a perfectionist when it comes to your bookish habits. Okay, the book that I thought of with a character who is a bit of a perfectionist was Teach Me by Olivia Dade. I really loved this. It's got a prickly heroine who is a teacher who always feels like her image has to be perfect. Like she's always in these fancy, perfectly tailored clothes, partly because of things about her background, and kind of comes across as standoffish when talking to the hero of the book and talking to her colleagues, but is really warm and cares deeply about her students. And this is really a love letter to teachers, and they have this like grumpy sunshine romance, and it's great. I really love it. So I think this is one with a good perfectionist character. Question 6. Your favorite book set in or referenced or linked to Africa. So my go-to recommendation for this is the Raybearer duology by Jordan E. Fuego. Both of these books are fantastic. This was her debut, and you know, a lot of times after a debut, a second book doesn't quite live up to the same hype, but in this case, both books are truly fantastic, and these are African-inspired YA fantasy that have a lot of twists and turns. They've got a lot of politics, there's a lot of diversity, they're multi-POV, and they're just really, really good. Some of the best YA fantasy I think we've gotten in the last couple of years. These are the UK covers if they look a little different, but I just love them. Like the faces in the covers, if you see them, I think they're really cool. Question 7. Judging by only the first 80 pages, the best book you have read, and then by the last 80 pages, the best book you've read. I like this question. I think it's great. So for the first part of this question, a book that I love based on the first 80 pages. This is a book where I would say definitely within the first 80 pages, I knew this was probably going to be a new all-time favorite book for me, and I was definitely correct. That is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. I just love this so much. I love the writing, I love the nested storytelling, and I just, everything about this is so my vibe. I know it's not everybody's, but it's definitely mine. And by the first 80 pages, I was like, I love this book. I feel like this is going to be a new favorite book for me, and I was not wrong. I love it. For the last 80 pages, I've got a couple of books that I was a big fan of that I think nailed their endings. I think they had really, really good, twisty, interesting endings. The first one is House of Earth and Blood, the first book in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. This book is definitely a bit longer than it needed to be. The early part of it like drags a bit, but man, that ending, like the last 80 pages of this book are a wild ride. Like so many things happen, and it was really good. Like the last 80 pages of it, I think made this book more of a favorite than it probably would have been otherwise, and I really liked it. This is set in a world that is sort of parallel to her other series. They all kind of exist in the same universe, which I think is kind of fun. There's like little connections, but this is more of an urban fantasy type story, but set in another world. It takes place in a city. There's more murder mystery elements to it, and yeah, I was a fan. I really enjoyed it. The other book that I think had a great ending that is one of my all-time favorite books in one of my all-time favorite series for adult sci-fi fantasy is The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. I just freaking love this whole thing. It's incredible, but the last 80 pages is great, and a lot of things happen, and there's questions answered and questions asked that you're wondering for the next part of the trilogy. If you haven't read these, do yourself a favor and read them. Like, they are brilliant. Brilliant. I won't go into it too much because I talk about these a lot on my channel, and we're currently doing a read along. I have a whole live show talking about this, but love this. Question 8. A book you love that prominently features an ethnic or local cuisine, some way prominently featured, even if just as a standout cameo. Okay, I have an answer for this. And somebody pointed out to me that in my end of month September wrap up, I forgot to talk about this book, which I'm like, no, how did I do that? I accidentally missed it. So I'm gonna probably talk about it more in October, but this is a good opportunity to talk about it. This is Light from Uncommon Stars by Rika Aoki. So this book, I think you will enjoy if you like Becky Chambers' approach to sci-fi. It's got kind of similar vibes in terms of like the softness, the character-driven elements to it, but it's definitely different and kind of a weird mashup of stuff that shouldn't work but kind of does. It follows a woman who's a violin teacher who's made kind of a deal with the devil for her soul. It also follows a young trans girl runaway who is an amazing violin player. It also follows a family of aliens who are in hiding on Earth running a donut shop. Okay. So that'll give you like a sense of some of the elements of this book. It's beautifully written. I really loved it. It's a debut novel, and I think it's really great. And one thing about it is it has amazing food descriptions. It's set in Los Angeles, but there's a lot of moments where people go to different ethnic restaurants, like getting noodles from Asian cultures or getting amazing Mexican food or the donuts, and like mouth-watering food descriptions that will take you to many diasporic subcultures that exist in Los Angeles. Definitely would recommend. Question 9. The last travel or other nonfiction book you looked at or read featuring a city other than your own, and do you have a story? So unfortunately, I don't really read nonfiction about travel. I mostly read stuff about like race and feminism. So I do not have a nonfiction pick for this, but I do have a fictional pick that is linked to a place that I've traveled to in the past that I can talk about. This was the first thing that came to mind, even though I read it a couple years back. Last year, I finished the trilogy. This is City of Brass by S.H. Chakraborty. I really love this entire trilogy. I think it's fantastic, but this book in particular begins in Cairo, Egypt, and I actually spent some time in Cairo when I was in college. So it was really fun for me getting to read about places in the city city and read about like the culture and the food that brought back a lot of memories from that time. I spent a semester there my junior year in college, and then I spent the following summer there as well. I did study abroad and spent some time teaching English, and I loved it. I had a great experience. I will say I don't really know what it's like now. When I went, it was like pre-Arab Spring, so things were very different then than they are now. But yeah, this was really fun for me. It was fun to kind of reminisce about what it was like to be in Cairo during that time, all of the people and the food and the historical locations and everything. So that was a lot of fun for me. And also it's a great fantasy series, so I would recommend it. Question 10. Any book you have read set in or referencing either Central or South America? Okay, I have 2 books for this from different locations, and I love both of them. First one is one of my favorite books from 2020. This is Lobizona by Romina Garber. This is YA portal fantasy that has werewolves and witches, and it draws on Argentinian culture and mythology. And book 2 actually spends some time in Argentina as well. It is so good. It deals with a lot of big questions and big issues, but it's also just a really fun, twisty story with a lot of great fantastical elements to it. The main character is a young woman who's an undocumented immigrant living in Florida with her mom, and so it's dealing with some of those issues, but there's something strange about her, and she ends up getting into a different world. This also tackles issues like sexism, gender norms, homophobia. Like there's a lot of stuff woven in here, and there's a lot of diversity in the characters, but also it's just a really great fun story. And this year I read Cazadora, which is book 2, and I loved it. It ends on a cliffhanger, so I need book 3, but definitely would recommend this if you want to spend some time in Argentina. And then my other recommendation is one of my favorite books from this year. This is The Inheritance of Orquídea Divina by Zoraida Cordova. This has a lot of magical realism elements to it, and it spends some time in Ecuador. That's where the main character's family is originally from, and some of the book is set in Ecuador, so it's drawing on that. This is a book about family, about magic, about generational trauma, and the things that we pass on, and it's very twisty and very interesting, and I absolutely loved it. Question 11. Your favorite book referencing another world, universe, or dimension? And I will give you some for all of those, because why not? For books set in my favorite world, I decided to go middle grade. I've got a couple of favorites. One of them is kind of like a middle grade YA crossover. I guess both of them are, but this is Alana the First Adventure by Tamora Pierce. I really love this world. I love the characters. There's magic, there's a lot of history, like it feels like a very grounded world, the Tortal books, and yeah, these are childhood favorites for me. Definitely a fan. My other pick for a world that I really love is the School for Good and Evil series by Soman Chainani. I think these are so much fun, especially if, like me, you were a fan of Disney, you were a fan of fairy tales and retellings. This, I think, puts a really interesting spin on those classic fairy tales and interrogates a lot of questions about like truth versus lies, heteronormative assumptions about romance and friendship, and I really love the series, particularly the first trilogy. The second trilogy, that one like lost me a little bit, but I really love the first trilogy. For a book set in my favorite universe, I have a couple that I picked. One is the Memory Call to Empire duology by Arkady Martin. I love these so much. They're political, epic science fiction that's really smart, really character driven, particularly in this, and asking a lot of interesting big questions that I love. I think this universe is really cool and really interesting. And then the other one I had to say was The Long Way to a Small Angry Planet by Becky Chambers. I just love this. This is like the epitome of soft sci-fi, where you just hang out with characters you really like, and it's like diverse and chilling, sweet and fun and cozy, and I love it. I love this world. I love all of the aliens and the planets and the way people interact with each other. I think this is great. Lastly, for a book with my favorite dimension, I'm going to return to another favorite I mentioned earlier, and that is The Starless Sea by Erin Morgenstern. This does end up going into kind of a different dimension, and I love it. I love everything about the way it's all set up. This is definitely a fave. Question 12. In Rita Goldman Gelman's Tales of a Female Nomad, Rita left an elegant life in LA to follow her dream of connecting with people and cultures all over the world. What is your dream read in any dream location, real or fictional, of your choosing? Okay, so My dream reading experience would be to read The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss at a cozy inn, maybe in the Scottish Highlands in fall or winter, sitting by the fire with a hot drink, maybe a hot toddy, and a cozy blanket, and just like diving into this world. I think that would be like my ideal reading experience. So there you go. The last part of this tag, which I think is kind of cool, is a tagging challenge where there are 3 challenges of types of channels that you have to tag people in, and it's kind of a lot, but I think this is fun, so I'm going to tag a bunch of people. Tag challenge number 1, tag a channel that has 80 or fewer subscribers. If you can't, then you must tag a channel with more than 80,000 subscribers. Okay, this took me a minute because I don't follow a lot of channels with fewer than 80 subscribers, but I realized somebody I follow has less than 80, and I'm like, how do you still only have less than 80 subscribers? So you guys should definitely go and check her out. This is Erin from Ramblin' Reader. She's great. She reads some similar stuff to me. She reads a lot of fantasy. She reads a good bit of romance, some mysteries and thrillers thrown in there, and she has really good book reviews. So if you're not following her, go check her out down below. As I'm filming this, she only has like 65 subscribers, which is a travesty. She makes regular content and it's like pretty good content. So you should definitely go and check her out. And Erin, I tag you to do this video. And then I want to tag another small channel. She doesn't have 80 subscribers, but she's got less than 500, which again is a travesty. I only recently found out that she was even on YouTube, but I've been following her reviews on like Twitter and Goodreads for a couple of years now, and I really love them. I think they're really interesting and insightful. This is Miss WOC Reader, so if you are not already following her, go check her out, and I would love to see her answers to these questions as well, so I'm tagging her in this challenge. And then lastly, I'm going to tag a channel I really like with more than 80,000 followers, just because I'd be really curious to see her answers to these questions. She has wonderful, thoughtful book reviews, even though that's not what most of her channel is about. I really love her book content. This is Plant-Based Bride, so check her out, and you know, if you want to do the tag, I would love to see your answers. Tag challenge number 2 is tag a channel you like that has reviewed any of Vern's novels or any of the novels you mentioned in this tag video. Okay, I couldn't think of anybody who I know has reviewed Jules Verne's novels, but I am going to tag Angela from the Literature Science Alliance, who also loved A Memory Called Empire and its sequel and has reviewed them on her channel. So if you love science fiction and fantasy, if you like getting recommendations for diversifying your reading, definitely go and check out her channel. She's wonderful, and I would love to see her answers to these questions. I think they would be really interesting. Final tag challenge is tag the 8 channels that you watched the most in the last 80 days. Okay, so like I said, I have been watching a lot less BookTube than usual, but I do have some people that I watch pretty regularly, so I guess you're all now going to know some of the people I watch regularly. I feel like a lot of these are not really going to come as a surprise because quite a few of them are people I'm friends with or like do stuff with regularly. So first up, my crew from the Blades and Bodice Troopers book club, Mara from Books Like Whoa, Leanna from Leanna's Library, and Amanda from The Naughty Librarian. I watch their content pretty regularly, even if I don't always comment on everything. I do watch their content pretty regularly. So I tag you guys if you're interested in doing this tag. It's kind of fun. We have Izzy from Happy for Now, Romancelandia updates, lots of romance content, manga if you're into that. She's wonderful. I'm gonna tag Ashley from Bookish Realm. I always love her videos. She recently did this great discussion video about booktubers making money and like people's feelings about that, and I think it's a great discussion. Jessica Williamson is a booktuber and author tuber, and I like her videos. I think she's got interesting insight into books. We don't often agree on which books we like. It's always an exciting day when we find a book that we both are fans of, but I like hearing her thoughts on stuff. Jess Owens, I definitely have to tag. I love her content. You might know her from doing community videos, but she talks a lot about sci-fi and fantasy. She's got a NonFiction book club. She's got a lot of cool stuff going on. And then the last person I'm going to tag is Kara from Wild Book Garden. She's got this really chill vibe to her videos, and she reads a lot of like quiet fantasy, classics, sweet historical romance, historical fiction, middle grade. And yeah, I just really like her a lot. I like her take on books, and I think she's great. So I tag all of those people. They're all some of the people that I watch pretty regularly here on BookTube. hopefully this was fun for everybody. Hopefully you got some good new book recommendations and some new channels to go check out if you're not already. Everything is going to be linked in the video description down below. Thank you to Michael for tagging me in this. I thought this was really fun. And for your question of the day, recommend a book that you love that is set in some place other than where you live. Let me know in the comments down below. If you guys like this video, it helps if you give it a thumbs up. Subscribe if you want to see more. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you next time.